In September 2015, Bobby White's life changed forever. One morning, everything he had worked for over 2 decades vanished in an instant. Bobby had spent 20 years building a successful career as a corporate pilot, flying Gulfstream jets for wealthy families, traveling across the United States and the Caribbean, and living a life most people only dream about. He had worked overseas in Nigeria for 4 years, spent another year in Dubai, and finally returned to Texas to secure what seemed like the perfect job. In his 30s, he was successful, financially secure, and respected in his profession. However, on that fateful morning, Bobby woke up with a crushing headache unlike any he had experienced before. The pain behind his eyes and radiating down his neck felt as if his skull was splitting from the inside. At first, he reached for ibuprofen, assuming it was a bad headache and expecting relief in an hour or two. But when he tried to send a simple text to his girlfriend, something terrifying became immediately clear. He couldn't read the words. Letters swam across his phone screen. Sentences made no sense, and his brain couldn't process what his eyes were seeing. The fear hit him like ice water. Bobby knew instantly that this wasn't a regular headache or a minor health issue. It was something far more serious. He was experiencing a hemorrhagic stroke, where a blood vessel in the brain bursts, causing bleeding that can be fatal or leave someone permanently disabled. To make matters worse, he had taken ibuprofen, a blood thinner, which could have worsened the bleeding and increased the risk of death. Despite the danger, Bobby remained calm and drove himself to urgent care. Medical professionals immediately recognized the severity of the situation and rushed him to a hospital. A CAT scan confirmed his worst fears. His brain was bleeding, and the stroke had ended his flying career. After 20 years of dedication, skill, and commitment, Bobby could no longer pilot aircraft. Federal regulations, insurance rules, and the risks involved made returning impossible. In a single morning, his identity, livelihood, and future had been stripped away. Many people in such a situation might have given up entirely, retreated into bitterness, or accepted a diminished life. Bobby, however, chose a different path. He asked himself a crucial question. If I can't fly anymore, what can I do? That simple question would guide him to a completely new life, one he had never imagined. Bobby's discovery of sailing came almost by accident. He had some casual experience with lake sailing in Texas and had occasionally chartered boats in the Caribbean during his flying days, but nothing serious. Now, faced with the need to rebuild his life, he began watching YouTube sailing channels like Sailing Vagabond and SV Delos, where ordinary people sailed across oceans, documenting adventures and building communities around their journeys. Seeing their success sparked something in Bobby. If others could make a living sharing their sailing experiences, why couldn't he? Encouraged by this possibility, he made a decision that many around him would have considered reckless. He sold everything he owned except for a few essential clothes, liquidated his life, and bought a sailboat, a 37-foot C&C, built in 1984. The boat was far from luxurious, costing him $24,000, with another $4,000 spent on essential upgrades to make it seaworthy. He named it Rough Seas, perhaps foreshadowing the challenges he would face. Within a month of purchasing the vessel, Bobby set sail from Galveston Bay, accompanied by his friend Megan. They were inexperienced, learning everything on the go, navigating mistakes, equipment failures, and unfamiliar waters, yet managing to cross the Gulf of Mexico in 7 days and continue to the Florida Keys and then the U.S. Virgin Islands. The experience was both exhausting and exhilarating, testing their resilience, determination, and problem-solving skills daily. Bobby began filming these early adventures with whatever camera equipment he could afford, capturing the rawness and unpredictability of life at sea. Initially, the plan was simple. Sail for a year, potentially earn some revenue from YouTube, then sell a boat, and work as crew on someone else's vessel. There was no ambition to become famous or build a major brand. Bobby simply wanted to reconstruct a meaningful life after losing everything. Yet, life had different plans. In the U.S. Virgin Islands, at a regatta in St. Thomas, Bobby met Laura, a traveling nurse working in the ICU who specialized in treating stroke patients. The connection was almost poetic. She understood his medical journey better than anyone else, having witnessed the struggles and recoveries of countless stroke survivors. Laura was impressed by Bobby's resilience. Most patients she treated had accepted limitations, allowing the stroke to define their lives. Bobby, however, had transformed his tragedy into opportunity. Laura began following Bobby's sailing channel, initially to observe his progress and later to participate. What was supposed to be a short, 2-month involvement became a long-term commitment, and she became both Bobby's partner in life and on the channel. Together, they would grow Sailing Doodles into one of YouTube's most recognized sailing channels, sharing real, unpolished, and inspiring content with audiences worldwide. The early success of Sailing Doodles, however, was not without challenges. By 2017, Bobby faced one of the most devastating setbacks of his sailing career, Hurricane Maria. Bobby had left rough seas in Puerto Rico in June, while he delivered another boat, a Lagoon 440, from St. Martin to Florida. The boat was under contract to sell with a buyer lined up, but the deal fell through, leaving rough seas exposed. When Hurricane Maria struck, the Category 5 storm ravaged the island, severely damaging rough seas. The mast snapped completely, the hull sustained structural damage, and water intrusion further compromised the vessel. This catastrophe could have ended his sailing journey, yet Bobby persevered. Lacking funds to replace the destroyed boat, he pivoted to a new strategy, transforming Sailing Doodles into a general travel vlog. He traveled to Thailand, where a YouTube viewer introduced him to Ron Pston, the owner of Gulf Charters and Island Spirit Boat Manufacturing. Bobby filmed content at Ron's facility, earning immediate traction, and then accepted an extraordinary offer: deliver a 50-foot Benno sailboat from Vancouver to Thailand. Successfully completing this journey would earn him ownership of the vessel, a reward far exceeding the value of his first boat. Bobby's willingness to take risks, coupled with his ability to adapt, exemplified his resilience and resourcefulness. Over time, Sailing Doodles grew into a major brand, attracting hundreds of thousands of subscribers and millions of views, eventually funding the purchase of a modern hybrid electric catamaran, Maverick. Bobby's journey from stroke survivor to sailing entrepreneur is remarkable, showing how determination, adaptability, and courage can turn life's setbacks into incredible opportunities. After acquiring the 50-foot Benno sailboat and successfully delivering it to Thailand, Bobby White's sailing journey entered an entirely new phase. This boat, which he named White Squall, was not just a vessel but a symbol of perseverance and an embodiment of his second chance at life. Unlike rough seas, which had been modest and old, White Squall was a larger, more capable boat, offering Bobby and his new partner, Laura, greater freedom to explore the world's oceans. The challenges of long-distance sailing, however, were far from over. Crossing the Pacific Ocean, navigating through tropical storms, and mastering unfamiliar navigation techniques tested every skill he had developed over the past 2 years. Yet, Bobby remained calm, patient, and determined. His approach to sailing mirrored the way he approached life after his stroke. Cautious but fearless, methodical yet open to learning from mistakes. Every leg of the journey was documented meticulously on his YouTube channel. Bobby filmed navigation challenges, onboard repairs, daily routines, and even his mistakes, showing viewers the realities of life on a boat rather than presenting an idealized version. This authenticity struck a chord with audiences. People were drawn not only to the stunning locations and dramatic sailing sequences, but also to Bobby's honesty about the difficulties of learning to sail, living in confined spaces, managing a small crew, and maintaining a functioning boat on a budget. Unlike some channels that focus solely on perfection, Sailing Doodles thrived on real-life experiences. Subscribers grew steadily, and viewers felt invested in Bobby's journey, rooting for his successes and empathizing with his setbacks. The channel's unique combination of adventure, education, and personal storytelling differentiated it from other sailing content online. By sharing the unfiltered realities of ocean life, Bobby made viewers feel as though they were part of the crew, living to the highs and lows alongside him. This sense of connection was critical in building the Sailing Doodles community. Comments poured in, questions were asked, advice was offered, and debates over sailing techniques flourished. The interactive nature of YouTube allowed Bobby to engage directly with his audience, creating a feedback loop that informed future content while deepening viewer loyalty. In the early years, Bobby and Laura also faced logistical challenges. Sailing long distances requires constant attention to weather, maintenance, and navigation, and mistakes can have serious consequences. Yet, every challenge became content, every problem a story. When equipment failed, they documented repairs. When navigation mistakes occurred, they shared the lessons learned. This approach turned setbacks into opportunities for engagement, education, and transparency. By 2018, Sailing Doodles had become more than just a personal project. It had evolved into a full-time career, supporting their lifestyle, funding their travels, and enabling them to maintain and upgrade their vessels. The brand expanded beyond simple vlogs to include tutorials, behind-the-scenes insights, and longer-form documentaries of critical events at sea. Viewers watched as Bobby and Laura explored islands across the Caribbean, sailed through Polynesia, and tackled complex coastal passages in Canada and Europe. The growth of Sailing Doodles illustrates a key principle. Resilience and authenticity are powerful drivers of connection in the digital age. Bobby's willingness to show vulnerability, share mistakes, and document both triumphs and disasters allowed him to establish credibility and relatability, essential traits for building a loyal online community. Beyond subscriber numbers and views, the channel created a sense of shared adventure. Viewers were not just spectators. They became part of a global community of sailing enthusiasts who learned, debated, and celebrated milestones together. By 2019, the channel's popularity had reached a level where it could fund significant upgrades. Bobby invested in a hybrid electric catamaran named Maverick, an Island Spirit 525E, equipped with modern navigation tools, more spacious living quarters, and improved safety systems. This investment marked a new chapter in Sailing Doodle's story, a shift from survival and experimentation to sustained exploration and content creation at a professional level. However, with success came scrutiny. As the channel's audience grew, so did public attention to Bobby's decisions, crew management, and lifestyle choices. This combination of adventure, entrepreneurship, and visibility would bring both opportunities and challenges in equal measure, testing Bobby's ability to maintain authenticity while navigating the pressures of public life. As Sailing Doodles grew in popularity, Bobby White found himself facing challenges he had never anticipated. Success brought visibility, and visibility brought scrutiny. One of the most recurring points of discussion among viewers and critics was a revolving cast of crew members on his boats. Each season seemed to feature new faces, and many of the crew were young, often female, and prominently featured in video thumbnails or titles. This pattern led to criticism and speculation. Some viewers accused Bobby of prioritizing aesthetics over sailing content, labeling the crew as eye candy, and suggesting that the channel's appeal relied more on attractive people than on genuine nautical expertise. Other skeptics argued that the high turnover of crew members indicated deeper problems, perhaps tension on board, mismanagement, or disagreements that caused departures. Former crew members sometimes shared cryptic comments online, describing their experiences as a situation that didn't work out or hinting at disagreements without providing specifics. Rumors circulated on social media and private sailing forums, including allegations of drinking on board, pressuring female crew, or creating uncomfortable dynamics. These whispers, although mostly anonymous and unverified, fueled debates and even some outrage among parts of the sailing community. It is important to note, however, that none of these claims were substantiated with public reports, lawsuits, or named accusers. For the most part, they remained speculation, gossip, and conjecture in a highly engaged online environment. Bobby addressed some of these issues publicly in Q&A sessions, podcasts, and YouTube videos. His approach was consistent. He did not name former crew members, did not engage in public disputes, and refrained from disclosing private details. Instead, he emphasized that life on a boat is challenging, that this lifestyle is not suited for everyone, and that people leave for a variety of personal reasons. He expressed goodwill toward past crew, stating he held no grudges and wished everyone the best. Some viewers interpreted this as genuine professionalism, while others saw it as careful image management. Beyond interpersonal dynamics, safety concerns also became a prominent topic of criticism. Experienced sailors often questioned Bobby's practices during passages, noting moments when crew members worked without tethers or life jackets, and when Bobby himself filmed from precarious positions on the boat, such as standing on the bowsprit alone. These concerns intensified following a significant incident in November 2020, when the catamaran New York Dogs experienced a catastrophic transmission failure during a severe storm. With winds exceeding 40 knots and waves crashing over the deck, a fire broke out in the engine room. Flames and smoke filled the cabin, creating an immediate life-threatening situation. The crew fought the fire with onboard extinguishers, while Bobby called. Rescue teams arrived in challenging conditions and safely evacuated the crew, but the incident caused extensive damage to the boat and raised questions about preparation, maintenance, and the prioritization of content versus safety. Some critics argued that monetizing the footage of the fire, including a 35-minute documentary released behind a paywall, blurred ethical boundaries. Supporters, however, pointed out that Bobby's transparency provided valuable lessons for other sailors, illustrating the consequences of equipment failure and emphasizing the importance of preparedness. This duality, where an action could be simultaneously educational and monetized, became a recurring theme in discussions about Bobby's leadership and channel management. Despite these controversies, the channel continued to grow. Bobby's transparent and consistent approach to handling criticism, combined with the high quality of his content and his willingness to share personal struggles, allowed him to maintain a loyal audience. Viewers admired his resilience, problem-solving abilities, and his ability to turn disasters into learning opportunities. The crew dynamics, safety incidents, and online rumors became part of the broader narrative of Sailing Doodles, a story of adventure intertwined with risk, human error, and the complexity of running a small business on the open ocean. Bobby's experience demonstrates the reality of life as a public content creator, where personal choices, professional practices, and the perceptions of a global audience converge. He faced scrutiny not only for what he did, but also for what people imagined he did. Navigating public opinion became as critical as navigating storms at sea. Through it all, Bobby continued producing content, expanding the channel, and maintaining focus on the core values that had brought him this far: authenticity, transparency, and a willingness to share both successes and failures. These experiences highlighted a crucial truth for creators. The journey is rarely smooth, and public perception is a force that must be respected and managed with care, honesty, and accountability. Bobby White's ability to balance risk, public scrutiny, and personal growth will become one of the defining features of Sailing Doodles' ongoing story. While Bobby White had achieved remarkable growth with Sailing Doodles, the life of a sailor, and especially a YouTuber documenting that life, was filled with unpredictable risks. One of the most significant early challenges came in September 2017 with Hurricane Maria. By this time, Bobby had left his first boat, Rough Seas, in Puerto Rico while he took a temporary assignment delivering a Lagoon 440 from St. Martin to Florida. He had arranged to sell Rough Seas with a buyer lined up, but the deal fell through at the last minute, leaving the boat unattended in a hurricane-prone region. When Maria struck, it hit as a Category 5 storm, one of the most powerful and destructive in recent history. The hurricane did not merely damage Rough Seas. It effectively destroyed it. The mast was snapped entirely. The hull sustained structural damage, and water intrusion compromised key areas of the vessel, leaving it practically unsalvageable. This was not just a financial setback for Bobby. Rough Seas represented the embodiment of his post-stroke reinvention, the first concrete step in building a new life after his flying career ended. Losing the boat could have been devastating enough to make him quit entirely. Yet, Bobby's resilience once again proved stronger than circumstance. Unable to replace Rough Seas due to financial constraints, he pivoted. Recognizing that sailing content alone might not fully sustain him without a reliable boat, he expanded his focus to include general travel content. He traveled to Thailand, where a connection with Ron Stan, the owner of Gulf Charters and Island Spirit Boat Manufacturing, offered an extraordinary opportunity. Ron needed someone to deliver a 50-foot Benno sailboat from Vancouver to Thailand, a difficult voyage that most sailors would avoid due to its length and risk. In exchange, Bobby would take ownership of the boat. Seizing this chance, Bobby completed the journey successfully, gaining a vessel that exceeded Rough Seas in size, capability, and potential for content creation. This episode illustrated one of Bobby's most defining traits: his ability to turn potential disaster into opportunity. A similar pattern emerged in November 2020, when disaster struck again on his 56-foot catamaran, New York Dogs. During a passage in heavy seas, with winds exceeding 40 knots, the boat suffered a catastrophic transmission failure. The failure was compounded by a fire that erupted in the engine room. Smoke and flames quickly filled the cabin, endangering both the crew and the vessel. In the middle of a storm miles offshore, Bobby and his crew faced a life-threatening scenario. Using the radio, Bobby called the Coast Guard, who launched a rescue in extremely challenging conditions. While the crew was safely evacuated, the boat itself sustained significant damage, creating a repair bill of $100,000, a cost that Bobby had to cover after insurance refused to pay. This incident sparked intense debate in the sailing community. Critics argued that Bobby's actions represented reckless behavior and poor planning. The absence of jacklines, tethers, and proper safety measures during the passage, combined with risky filming practices, were cited as examples of prioritizing content over safety. Supporters countered that Bobby's transparency in documenting the disaster, turning it into a 35-minute instructional video behind a paywall, provided valuable lessons for other sailors. It demonstrated the reality of equipment failure, the importance of preparation, and the consequences of operating in dangerous conditions. Importantly, the video also served as a revenue stream, allowing Bobby to fund repairs while educating his audience. This duality, where a catastrophe became both a learning opportunity and a way to support the channel, highlighted Bobby's resourcefulness, business acumen, and ability to extract value from adversity without compromising authenticity. Beyond these major events, smaller incidents continue to challenge Bobby and Sailing Doodles. Crew disagreements, maintenance struggles, and unpredictable weather required constant problem-solving and adaptability. Yet, Bobby consistently demonstrated capacity to navigate these challenges with composure. By documenting not only his successes, but also the failures, the channel provided an unparalleled inside look at the realities of life at sea, helping followers understand that sailing is as much about perseverance and decision-making as it is about adventure. In this way, Bobby turned disasters into narrative opportunities, building both trust and engagement with his audience. The combination of real-life drama, educational content, and human resilience became the defining appeal of Sailing Doodles. Audiences weren't just watching beautiful locations or thrilling passages. They were witnessing a story of transformation, risk, and recovery. Each setback, from Hurricane Maria to the engine room fire, became a testament to Bobby's commitment, creativity, and ability to maintain momentum even when faced with what could have been career-ending challenges. These experiences established a pattern. Bobby's success was never accidental. It was a result of deliberate choices, strategic risk-taking, and an unyielding refusal to let misfortune dictate his future. By learning from each setback and documenting it in a way that educated and engaged viewers, he solidified the channel's credibility and created a sustainable platform for growth. Even as Sailing Doodles flourished professionally, Bobby White's personal life remained under constant scrutiny. By early 2025, after years of sailing, content creation, and maintaining a high-profile YouTube channel, Bobby's relationship with his longtime girlfriend came to an unexpected end. For viewers, this breakup was more than just a private matter. It became part of the channel's narrative, amplified by the intimacy that comes with sharing life at sea online. Bobby and his partner have been integral to the identity of Sailing Doodles. Fans have followed their adventures together, seen them navigate storms side by side, and celebrated milestones and vacations across oceans and islands. For years, their partnership added depth, emotion, and relatability to the content. The breakup, announced in a video that was concise and professional, left viewers shocked. Bobby chose to remain vague about the details, citing differences in life stages and the natural evolution of their personal paths. He avoided airing grievances, emphasizing respect, privacy, and a desire to move forward separately. This decision reflected his character, measured, professional, and conscious of public perception. Yet, despite his discretion, the audience reacted strongly. Public breakups are always scrutinized, but when millions of viewers feel invested in a couple's story, reactions can be intense. Comment sections transformed into amateur courtrooms, filled with speculation, analysis, and theories about what went wrong. Was it the relentless demands of the sailing lifestyle, the stress of managing a YouTube business, the high turnover of crew members, or simply personal differences that grew over time? Bobby gave no answers, and perhaps rightly so. He understood that some things should remain private, even when life unfolds before millions of eyes. But this discretion did not shield him from the consequences of public interest. Every viewer had an opinion, and every opinion contributed to pressure that a typical private individual would never experience. The intersection of personal life and professional persona became starkly clear. Being a YouTuber meant that private challenges could not always be contained. Bobby had to balance the emotional toll of a breakup with the relentless demands of running a channel, maintaining content schedules, and ensuring the business remained viable. This balancing act required discipline and emotional resilience. Unlike traditional careers, where private life can be compartmentalized, content creators face a reality in which viewers often conflate the personal and professional. For Bobby, the stakes were particularly high because Sailing Doodles was not just a hobby. It was a full-time job that funded his lifestyle, crew, and the maintenance of expensive vessels. Taking extended time off was not a simple option. Instead, he continued filming, sailing, and producing content even while processing personal loss, demonstrating a remarkable level of emotional endurance and commitment to his craft. The public breakup also highlighted the unique pressures of modern content creation. Viewers often feel a sense of entitlement to personal information, demanding explanations, and sometimes passing judgment on private decisions. Bobby's choice to maintain professionalism and privacy, while continuing to engage his audience, reflected a sophisticated understanding of this dynamic. It was a calculated decision that balanced transparency with boundaries, a strategy that allowed him to preserve dignity while maintaining the trust and loyalty of his subscribers. Moreover, Bobby's handling of the breakup reinforced the core themes of Sailing Doodles: resilience, adaptability, and authenticity. Just as he had faced career-ending strokes, hurricanes, fires, and other setbacks, he confronted personal challenges with the same determination and perspective. The breakup was another chapter in a life defined by navigating uncertainty, learning from hardship, and continuing forward despite emotional and practical obstacles. For viewers, this vulnerability added depth to Bobby's story. It reminded audiences that behind the breathtaking landscapes, exciting adventures, and educational content, there was a human being grappling with the same emotional complexities as anyone else. It reinforced the authenticity that had helped build the Sailing Doodles community, showing that success does not preclude struggle, and that perseverance is as much about emotional strength as it is about technical skill or business acumen. In this way, the 2025 breakup was not just a personal event. It became part of the broader narrative of growth, resilience, and the realities of living life publicly on the internet. Bobby's response demonstrated that even in the face of public curiosity and personal loss, maintaining professionalism, respect, and focus on one's goals is possible, and ultimately compelling for an audience seeking more than superficial storytelling. As Sailing Doodles continued to grow, Bobby White found himself under increasing scrutiny, not just for the adventure content he created, but for the management of his crew and the safety practices on his boats. Over time, some viewers and critics began raising questions about his approach to sailing with a constantly changing team. The channel's frequent turnover of young, often female crew members became a recurring topic in online forums, private social media groups, and comment sections. Many critics allege that the channel prioritized aesthetics over experience, suggesting that attractive crew members were featured prominently in thumbnails and videos to attract viewers. Others speculated that the high turnover indicated potential interpersonal problems, such as harsh living conditions, disagreements on board, or unclear expectations. Rumors about inappropriate behavior began circulating, including unverified claims of harassment, pressure to engage in sexual relationships, and drinking excessively while at sea. These allegations, while never substantiated publicly, fueled debate among the sailing and YouTube communities alike. Some critics claimed that Bobby created an environment where young crew members were vulnerable, while supporters argued that life on a boat is inherently challenging and that the departures could be attributed to the lifestyle itself rather than any misconduct. Importantly, none of these rumors resulted in lawsuits, public accusations, or verified reports, meaning they remained largely anonymous and speculative. Bobby addressed the situation through Q&A sessions, podcasts, and direct responses on his videos. His approach was consistent. He refrained from naming former crew members, avoided public disputes, and focused on explaining that life on a boat is not for everyone. He emphasized that people leave for a variety of personal reasons, and that the lifestyle itself requires resilience, adaptability, and tolerance for confined spaces, long hours, and unpredictable conditions. Critics interpreted his discretion in different ways. Some saw it as professionalism and maturity, while others perceived it as calculated public relations management, intended to avoid controversy while maintaining a positive image for the channel. The truth likely exists somewhere in between, beyond interpersonal dynamics. Safety practices aboard Sailing Doodles vessels were also a point of contention. Experienced sailors frequently criticized Bobby for risky habits, such as filming from dangerous positions, standing on the bowsprit without tethers, and not consistently using jacklins or life jackets during passages. While some of these behaviors could be considered acceptable under certain conditions, they became significant when combined with other incidents, particularly the November 2020 transmission fire on New York docks. That event, which forced a Coast Guard rescue, highlighted both the inherent dangers of sailing and the consequences of decisions made under challenging conditions. Bobby turned this disaster into content, producing a 35-minute documentary for his audience. Some argued that monetizing the footage crossed ethical boundaries, while others praised him for transforming a critical safety incident into a teaching moment for the broader sailing community. The public criticism illustrated a key challenge for modern content creators. Transparency and engagement must be balanced with accountability, professionalism, and ethical considerations. Bobby's ability to navigate the scrutiny required a careful mix of honesty, discretion, and strategic communication. By acknowledging risks and discussing mistakes without assigning blame or sensationalizing drama, he reinforced the channel's credibility while maintaining viewer interest. These controversies also underscore the duality of sailing content creation. On one hand, audiences are drawn to the drama, unpredictability, and authenticity of life at sea. On the other hand, creators are held to high standards regarding safety, ethics, and interpersonal conduct. Bobby's navigation of these pressures demonstrated an understanding of how to maintain trust and engagement in a highly public environment. Ultimately, the mixture of rumors, criticism, and verified incidents became part of the narrative that defined Sailing Doodles. Viewers were witnessing not just a channel about sailing, but a story about risk, human complexity, resilience, and the constant negotiation between public perception and private reality. Bobby's choices, how he addressed rumors, responded to criticism, and documented safety incidents, revealed the balancing act required for a creator operating at the intersection of adventure, business, and personal life in the digital age. Bobby White's journey with sailing.